Okay, today we are taking a journey to a truly breathtaking ancient anomaly sitting right at the absolute top of the world. High up in the eastern Taurus mountain range lies a monumental site that honestly defies logic, it defies engineering, and it kind of defies time itself. This is Mount Nemrut. And trust me, by the end of this explainer, you'll be wondering how something this impossibly ambitious ever managed to exist in the first place.
Picture this for a second. You're looking at colossal stone heads and massive seated figures, all situated at a dizzying altitude of 2,150 meters. I mean, how on earth did ancient builders haul and carve these monolithic blocks in a freezing, thin-air alpine environment? Who commanded that kind of immense, backbreaking labor in a place so hostile to human settlement? And perhaps most importantly, what drove an ancient civilization to build such an enigmatic monument so far removed from the valleys below?
Okay, let's dive into this and see what we're going to cover. First, the great mystery at the world's peak. Second, the historical discovery of the lost heritage. Third, the splendor of the tumulus and terraces. Fourth, the synthesis of East and West. And finally, number 5, sky secrets and the lion horoscope.
Starting with Section 1. The Great Mystery at the World's Peak. Sanctuary of the Commagene Kingdom.
All right, to really understand this site, we've got to rewind back to the 1st century BC, to a small but incredibly wealthy buffer state known as the Commagene Kingdom. You see, this isn't just some random scattering of ruins up in the mountains. Mount Nemrut is actually a protected 1987 UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it was built by King Antiochus I. He designed this entire peak to serve as both a royal cult center and, well, a monumental tomb for himself. But you might be wondering, why did a buffer state king need such a massive display? Wedged dangerously right between rival superpowers, Antiochus really needed a physical manifestation of his ego and his absolute divine right to rule. It was a staggering political statement meant to immortalize himself amongst the gods and seriously deter his enemies.
Moving right along to Part 2, the historical discovery of the lost heritage, uncovering Mount Nemrut.
You know, given its massive size, it's wild to think about how such an incredible structure remained hidden for so long. For centuries, literally nobody outside the local pastoral population even knew this place existed. It wasn't until 1881 that Carl Sester, he was a German engineer just doing routine roadwork feasibility studies, stumbled upon these giant statues and reported them back to Berlin in absolute disbelief. The very next year, Otto Puchstein led a Prussian expedition to inspect the site. Then in 1883, we saw the first Turkish archaeological research, led by museum director Osman Hamdi Bey and sculptor Yervanti Vaskan. But the truly grooming work, that happened much later, between the 1930s and 1980s. Archaeologists Friedrich Karl Derner and Teresa Gohl conducted these massive, systematic excavations. Gohl, in particular, spent decades battling blistering heat, freezing nights, and harsh mountain winds, just to painstakingly map out the architectural layout we see today.
Which brings us to Part 3. The splendor of the tumulus and terraces, architecture at the summit.
Now that we know how it was found, let's look at the sheer physical layout. 50 meters. That is the height of the central conical tumulus at the peak. To put that into perspective for you, that is roughly the height of a 15-story office building. And what's absolutely mind-blowing here is that this isn't a natural mountain peak. No, this 50-meter-high mound is built entirely out of small, manually piled pieces of crushed limestone. Thousands of ancient workers carried countless rocks up an unforgiving mountain just to construct an artificial peak perfectly centered over a king's burial site.
And if that wasn't enough, here's another staggering number for you. 150. That is the diameter, in meters, of this man-made tumulus. Beneath this massive 150-meter-wide pile of loose, crushed stone is where King Antiochus's bedrock tomb is believed to be carved, and it is basically an ancient, highly ingenious booby trap. Because of the severe risk of landslides from all those loose rocks and the sheer physical danger involved in excavating a literally shifting mountain of gravel, no archaeologist has ever been able to reach the actual burial chamber. It remains perfectly and frustratingly sealed by its own brilliant design.
Now, surrounding this massive tumulus are distinct terraces. The East Terrace directly faces the sunrise, and it acted as the main religious center, complete with a square altar and giant statues designed to catch the very first light of dawn. On the exact opposite side, perfectly mirroring those statues, is the West Terrace, which faces the sunset. So while the East celebrates the breaking dawn and new beginnings, the West is famous for its rich collection of astrological and ancestral reliefs. It's this gorgeous duality. One side welcomes the sun, and the other guides it into the night.
Connecting the two is the North Terrace. You can kind of think of this as the grand ceremonial passage. Interestingly enough, along this path, archaeologists found unfinished steles and pedestals. Just imagine the scene here thousands of years ago. This was the staging area for spectacular, loud, fire-lit religious processions that wound their way right across the mountain peak. You'd have priests, royals, and musicians moving in a massive spectacle between the dawn and dusk sanctuaries.
Let's look at Part 4, the synthesis of East and West, a bridge of cultures.
So, King Antiochus didn't just build this whole thing as a giant ego trip. He actually used religion as a highly calculated political unifier. His kingdom was basically a geopolitical pressure cooker, sitting directly on the border between the rapidly expanding Roman Empire to the west and the mighty Parthian Empire to the east. To keep his diverse people united, and frankly, to avoid angering either superpower, he relied on Greco-Persian syncretism. That's the intentional blending of Greek and Persian religious beliefs into one unified hybrid system that absolutely everyone could worship.
Now, what's really interesting is how literal this blending was. Antiochus commissioned massive 8 to 10 meter tall seated statues that combined Eastern and Western deities into single towering figures. So you have the Greek Zeus merged with the Persian Ahura Mazda to create Zeus Aramazdes, the ultimate head of the gods. You have the god of light and justice seamlessly combining Apollo, Mithra, Helios, and Hermes into one single entity. And you have the god of strength merging Heracles, Artagnes, and Ares.
But it wasn't just the hybrid gods sitting up there. The statues are flanked by a guardian lion representing earthly power and a guardian eagle acting as the messenger of the heavens. And right alongside Tyche, the goddess of fertility who represented the Commagene land itself, sits King Antiochus. He bears the title Theos, which literally means God. Talk about a healthy ego, right? He audaciously placed his own statue on the exact same stone tier as the immortal masters of the universe.
To further cement this divine branding, Antiochus placed specific carved steles all around the terraces. The Sextices or Dexitices steles literally depict Antiochus casually shaking hands with gods like Zeus and Apollo, just as if they were old friends on perfectly equal terms. Then, to really legitimize his earthly right to rule, he erected ancestral steles. These served as an ultimate royal resume, tracing his mother's lineage all the way back to Alexander the Great and the Macedonians, and his father's lineage back to the great Persian kings like Darius and Cyrus. He was proving, set in stone, that he was the ultimate legitimate bridge of cultures.
Finally, Part 5, Sky Secrets, the Lion Horoscope, and Ancient Astronomy. Antiochus didn't just connect East and West, he went ahead and connected his reign directly to the cosmos itself. On the West Terrace, researchers found an incredibly specific artifact. If you look closely at the details, it's a magnificent relief carving of a lion, but its body is covered in 19 distinct stars. Next to a crescent moon, positioned precisely on the lion's neck, 3 specific planets are arrayed in a very deliberate line across its back: Mars, Mercury, and Jupiter.
And this brilliantly illustrates that this wasn't just mythological art. It is a highly accurate, ancient star chart. By calculating the specific alignment of those planets, the stars, and the moon in the constellation of Leo, modern astronomers can actually pinpoint an exact date, July 7th, 62 BC, with some alternate theories suggesting 109 BC. It is quite literally a screenshot of the ancient night sky, permanently locking in stone the exact celestial moment of King Antiochus's rise to power, or maybe the founding date of the sanctuary itself. It remains one of the oldest known horoscopes in human history.
Make no mistake, this site was engineered for eternity. Behind these colossal statues on the massive stone blocks, Antiochus left the Nomos, a massive inscription written in Greek. It reads like a final will and testament, laying out the sacred laws of the site. It details the exact priestly duties, the festivals to be held, and, dramatically, it casts fierce, unending curses upon absolutely anyone who dares to vandalize or harm his monument.
So, we've uncovered the hybrid gods, we've read the sacred laws, and we've decoded the stars. Yet, the central tomb of King Antiochus I remains entirely untouched, locked safely inside a brilliant, deadly trap of 50 meters of loose, crushed limestone. It really forces us to ask, what other ancient secrets remain completely hidden beneath that rock, right at the top of the world?